Thank you, Erin. It is now my pleasure to invite to the stage our keynote speaker, Chris Heeter. Chris is an award-winning speaker and a recipient of the Meetingsnet Editors Pick Top 10 Speakers of 2014, as well as being the finalist for 2 years in a row for Minnesota Meetings and Events Best Team Building Facilitator. These awards fuel Chris's fire to create a wild revolution in the workplace. As a wilderness guide for 33 years, Chris has led countless teams, both canine and human, wondering which one was easier. Featured on National Geographic Today, Chris brings decades of wilderness leadership experience indoors to offices and off-sites, helping us recognize that working together doesn't have to be so complicated. Her stories come from her own wild life, from helping breed, raise, and train a team of 16 sled dogs for 12 years, and from the rivers that serve as the backdrop for her many whitewater rafting trips that she has guided. Living wild for Chris includes heating her home with wood, sustaining a large organic garden, and guiding trips from dog sledding in northern Minnesota to kayaking in Baja. Okay, I'm already jealous. So, to get you started, Chris has a few questions for you to consider as we begin this journey. When was the last time that you felt wild? Was it at home? Or away on a trip in Chicago? Was it, okay, all right, come on. Was it with loved ones or strangers? Or dare I ask, was it with your work, with families experiencing homelessness? If you're ready to join this journey to the wild side, please give a warm, wild welcome to Chris Heeter.
Made you say yes to this line of work? To tag on to what was asked earlier, why do you do the work that you do? What made you say yes? Do you remember? Think back. Was it because that was what was available at the time? Maybe a friend got you into it? Maybe this is an issue that you are concerned about and wanted to help? Can you remember? Well, whenever I speak, I do some research ahead of time, right, to figure out a little bit more about what life is like in your shoes, and so I did that for this conference. Spoke with Amy at great length, and I also have a friend that works in a shelter in Minneapolis, so I had her over for dinner. We're talking about a bunch of stuff, and I said, really, what makes you say yes to something like this? And her answer could not have surprised me more. I thought I heard her wrong when she said, well, I do it because I'm selfish. I said, excuse me? She said, really? I get to be around people who are raw and vulnerable and not so polished and hidden. I get to see strength like I've never seen it before. I said, seriously, tell me more. She goes, well, it's to my core taught me that we have more in common than we have different, which is saying something in our current climate. And she said, I've learned about strength. And essentially, I feel like I get paid to grow spiritually and learn about and witness strength in many forms every day. I said, wow. And I'm guessing that if you're still in this field, some elements of that ring true for you, or you couldn't do the work. But we contrast that, of course, with there's too many of you, there's too many gathered here, all employed in something that shouldn't be. So how do we reconcile that? How do we move forward? My job today, they said, tell them about teamwork, tell them about collaboration and self-care, and keep them going. So let me say how honored I am to be here with you and how grateful I am for the work that you do. Because you're in a place, this is not just you, but you are working in a realm that people want to pretend doesn't exist. And so I don't imagine it's a very thankful kind of job. But I hope something in what my friend said resonates in terms of how it is that you approach each day. Because we know that in addition to that, you see a lot of horrifying things, and that your job is also gritty and challenging and difficult and hopeful and hopeless. Because sometimes, no matter you give your best efforts, it's still not enough. So here we are gathered to figure out how to do it more and how to do it better and how to keep believing in some pretty challenging situations. I would submit that in order to continue in this field, we're going to need you to be a little bit more wild. And here's what I mean by wild. Having the courage to bring the gift of all of who you are to all of what you do. Make sense? Having the courage to bring the gift of all of who you are to all of what you do. Now you may be saying, well, Chris, you guide wilderness trips. So people come to you, they probably go there to be wild. We're in kind of a different setting. So I thought, well, let me give you some examples of people in different walks of work life being wild and see if anything rings a bell. So for starters, there's a speaker named Toni Newman. Has become a friend of mine, but when I first met her, she's kind of big time. She's from Canada and has been president of the whole Speakers Association and speaks all over the world, Fortune 500 companies. And I met her, and she invited me to give her a call. So a couple weeks later, I get on my nerve, I give Toni Newman a call. I got her voicemail. Now this was Toni Newman's voicemail, start to finish. You ready? Went like this. Hi, our kids have stolen the keys to our office and our cell phones. They've promised to give them back only if we give them our undue attention for the next week. So if you're getting this message and it's after May 18th, please call the local authorities. That was her business voicemail, you guys. What do you think? Detrimental to her business? No? Well, what did you hear about Toni Newman then, if that was not detrimental? Tell me what you learned about her. She has a sense of humor. What else we got? Family values, absolutely. Yeah, she's explaining that she's trying to balance her life. And I would submit that that's a pretty wild voicemail to leave on your business line, right? When we're wild, things wake up, things happen. Because what do you suppose I did when I heard that voicemail? I laughed, I left a message. Come on, what'd I do? I changed my voicemail. Of course I did. The other thing I do, you'll never hear a boring one on my machine. Amy, if you remember calling me, it's all about my new puppy and I'm chasing him all over the house if I can't get to the phone. I also texted 3 friends and said, you gotta call this number and then just call me back. Because it's fun. It's fun. When someone is willing to be a little bit more wild, it goes like this and invites us to step toward it. But still, she's sole proprietor. Maybe you don't have that much flexibility with your voicemail. Maybe you do. How about, so I work with a personal trainer, right? When I can, when I'm in town. And his business is such that you go to he comes to your home. So a friend and I go to her house, so 2 of us work out together. We've been doing this for a long time. Once a week, he just breaks us. And my stupid friend one day decided to put a pull-up bar in a closet doorway. Why she did that, I still don't know. But Michael, the trainer, gets all excited, right? So he's, oh, come on upstairs, let's go try this. So we get up there, and what he wanted us to do was hang on the pull-up bar like this, and then lift your legs up and do like a bicycle kick. This is really hard. So my friend goes first. She's hanging on the bar like this, and she's trying to lift her legs up and kick, and it was quite awkward and funny, and she was making really odd noises and facial expressions. And you know what Michael did? He laughed. In fact, he laughed so hard he had to leave the room for a moment. And I think that was wild too. He had established enough of a rapport with us that it was okay to show a little bit more of himself, because it was funny. We were all three laughing. Even that is wild. You work with people in horrifying situations, but I'm sure you wouldn't be in this if you weren't able to find some elements of humor as we go along. And because of that, I trust him. So if he's telling me I'm looking pretty strong, I'll believe that too. But once again, he's still a sole proprietor, so let's move on to something bigger. How about a major medical company? How could they be wild? Well, I was talking to a group, telling them about being wild at work. And one woman raised her hand, and she said, you know, people in my life know me as fun and creative. And it's like I get to work and I hang fun and creative on a hook, and I go do my job. Then I get off of work and I put fun and creative back on and I go do my life. So I said, all right, how many people think it would be detrimental to work with someone who's fun and creative? No hands went up. She stood up. She said, you know, things are going to be different around here. And she started bringing more of that part of herself into her daily work. Now, it turns out she's an administrative professional. And she realized that the department she supported, nobody did anything about birthdays. So she started going one-on-one, asking people about their birthday and getting to know them in some fun, different ways. And when their birthday came around, she would come up with fun and creative ways to celebrate. And everybody got to know each other a little bit better. That year, that department had their best numbers ever. I can't prove that that's why, but I guarantee you it's part of it. When we know each other a little bit better, we're able to work together that much more whole. So, I go all over the country asking people when you're feeling wild, when you're having the courage to bring the gift of all of who you are to all of what you do, what words come to mind. And what I have found is there's a very universal set of words that come up. If I could hear you better, I'd ask you, but I'm going to just show you what most people say, and I imagine you'll recognize. So people yell out words like free. When we're feeling wild, we feel free, or we feel creative, we feel spontaneous, or courageous, passionate, and alive. Makes sense, right? I mean, these are good wild words. Now, I get that you might look at that list of words and whatever other ones you might have thought of and think, well, that's nice, but take a walk in my shoes. Or maybe you recognize the words, yeah, we get there sometimes, but man, we're just constantly putting out fires or doing all the things we have to do, and you know, it's hard to get to these words. Here's the thing. If wild at work doesn't seem all that important, let's take a moment and look at the opposites of some of these words. So if you aren't feeling free, what might you be feeling? Okay, I'm hearing the word. How about trapped? Thanks. If we're not feeling creative, we might be feeling bored, right? If we're not feeling spontaneous, might be rigid. If we're not feeling courageous, might be feeling cautious or dull. And if we're not feeling alive, I don't even want to. Does it matter to be wild? You bet it does. You bet it does. That's how we're going to get through the lists and the fires to put out. If we show up free, creative, spontaneous, courageous, passionate, all these beautiful words, that's how we're going to get through the work, maybe when it's its hardest. So my question for you is, how wild is your organization? How wild are you in your organization? All right, I think that might be why they called me. How about this one? I'll bet you'll do this one. Can you hold the vision of someone's wildness when they are someone who's experiencing homelessness? That, I bet you do. I'll bet you do. And think how powerful that is. So we want to make sure you're doing that for the clients that you serve, but we also want to make sure you're doing that for yourself and for one another, because that's how we're going to keep moving. That's how we're going to keep doing the work that you do that matters, that impacts this world more than anybody will ever say. So naturally, in order to explore this, naturally we would turn to the world of dog sledding, right? No, it makes perfect sense. For the few of you who don't quite make that connection, I want you to picture a team that you're a part of. Think about it. Picture their faces, kind of run through in your mind, a group, whatever, but a team that you're a part of. Think about their personalities, that kind of thing. And then think about a meeting that you're having with that group. Y'all got it? You tell me if this doesn't look just a little bit familiar. Lots of ideas about when to get started on things. Different ideas about directions to go. Somebody's always feeling left out. Makes sense now, doesn't it? See, wild teams and wild organizations harness this energy rather than stifle it. It is tempting when people come at you with their whole wild selves to say, whoa, especially if you're working with kids or youth, hang on. It can feel chaotic and out of control. Wild organizations say, yes, bring it, bring it. Let's see what's in this mix. This is the place of creativity, because there's no straight path to keep getting and keeping kids in school, right? It's the place of creativity, it's the place of connection, it's the place of belonging that you all know matters so much. Open our arms and say yes to our clients, to one another. Bring it. Let's see what's here. Let's see what we can make happen when we show up with all of who we are. Even for the children and the youth you serve, bring it all. Let's see if we can tease out your wild self enough to help you navigate a system that's stacked against you. Bring it. That's what wild is all about. And I have found sled dogs to be the best examples, really, because these are animals doing exactly what they were born to do, and therefore they are joyful, joyful beings. I've been guiding dog sledding trips for 30 years now. And on my trips, everybody helps, but not everybody goes on every run. But I have never, ever in 30 years seen any dog run start without everybody smiling, because it's just this rush of being lined up and wild. I'm going to give you a few basic sled dog facts just so you can get a sense of it before we carry on with our stories here. For one thing, they do live outside year-round. I love that you're from all over the place, so my Alabama friends and my Hawaii friends, they live outside year-round. And their preferred temperature for pulling a sled is anywhere from about 10 degrees to 10 below is comfortable for them to pull a sled. So we dress accordingly to be with them. They are almost the exact same DNA as wolves, closer than any other canine, domesticated, I should say. And that means that they do act like a wolf pack. There is an alpha male, there is an alpha female within a sled dog pack. And they look out for each other and they howl and they do all the things that wolves do. So that's kind of interesting and fun also to be around that sense of wildness. They love to pull, you guys. Anyone still thinking, oh, those poor dogs have to pull people on sleds? Really, they love it. The poor dogs are the ones who don't get to go. Those of you who have northern breed dogs as pets know that when you go for a walk, it looks like this, right? They know all about how to pull. Not so good at stopping, but they're really good at pulling. To get them to turn left, to turn right, to please don't chase that bunny, is all voice commands to another species. There's no reins, nothing. All I'm doing is hanging on to the sled. And I would say to my lead dog, Scrapper, Scrapper, haw. Haw means left, G means right. You'll notice I did not say, Scrapper, haw, with a question in my voice, because what would she do? Right. She'd be like, well, she doesn't know. I'm going this way. And I'm not screaming at her. She can hear me just fine. She doesn't want to feel yelled at from here. And it is the great reminder, really, that how we say is more important than what we say. You've heard the statistics, right? It's like 7% is really the words, 38% is how we say it, 55% is body language. So when I say Scrapper haw, I'm connecting with her joy. I'm conveying our connection again. I'm reminding her of the training we've done and my belief in her, all in how I say it. The word is almost an afterthought. And the other thing I love about dog sledding is think about the image of leadership. Right? So I'm the musher. Ultimately, I am the leader of this team. And I am standing on my sled and my team is pulling me. Right? I'm not out front dragging them along, having them do whatever we're doing. I'm guiding them based on the training I've given them, and they do the pulling. How's that for an image of leadership? I love that. So I've spent many, many years speaking on leadership and teamwork and diversity. And I've gotten interested lately in looking even one more level higher into the world of work cultures and what that could do and how that might impact being a wild work culture. And what I realized was I would submit that there are 5 different essentials of a wild work culture. So if we had these, you'd be pretty wild at work. So you would be wildly present, wildly welcoming, wildly inspiring, wildly original, and wildly generous. And I was thinking about your group and what I've learned about you all, and I thought, well, we ought to focus on really the first 3. And of course, I have stories for you about all of this. So wildly present. I teach dog sledding. I told you, right? People come to us, we come up to northern Minnesota for 4 days, you're off the grid, and you learn all about dog sledding. And so I would say 95% of the time when I run a dog team, I have someone in my sled. And we trade later, and other people drive and stuff. But almost always, I have somebody in my sled. And so when you start a dog run, you can imagine it's quite a force when you first lift the brake off. And so it's polite to have your foot on the brake so that the person in the basket doesn't get jarred backwards so much. So 95% of the time, that's how I start a run, is with one foot on the runner and one foot on the foot brake. There's a little bar that goes across, points go into the snow. And then a friend of mine asked me to help her train her racing team. And in exchange for training, she would let me run her B team in a race. I thought, well, that'd be fun. I've never done that. So we did a lot of training, crazy stories there. But anyway, we get to race day. Now again, Alabama and Alaska. Alaska knows, Alabama won't. Sled dog races really have spectators. And there's like bleachers and people are clapping with mittens on. It's really interesting. Anyway, when you race, it's a staggered start. But the thing is, instead of having someone riding in my sled with 4 dogs pulling, I have an empty, really lightweight sprint sled and 6 dogs. And then, if I'm to start with my foot on the brake, all my weight's on one runner and the sled will tip. So, getting ready for my first race ever. I'm all nervous and all excited. It's a staggered start. Everybody gets a timed start, right? So the countdown happens. And what happens, the way you start, I brought this along to show you. Oops, it's hiding. Here it is. See, this is your brake. It's called a snow hook. And there's a cable behind the starting line, and this is hooked to you, to your sled, to your dogs. And when the countdown ends, this big burly guy lifts the snow hook off the cable and hands it to you. So your very first move in a race is backwards being handed this thing that you then hang on your sled. 95% of the time, I start with my foot on the brake. So everybody's clapping, the countdown is coming, I'm looking at the big burly guy, and they go, okay, don't step on the brake, don't step on the brake, Chris. Do not, whatever you do, step on the brake, don't step on the brake. 3, 2, 1. You know what happened? I tipped immediately. I'm riding down, hanging on to the sled. On and on, down the snow. My sleeves are packing up with snow. They're being pushed up to my armpits, and I'm hanging on because the dogs don't care. That release happened from the snow hook. They're running. It doesn't matter to them whether I'm upright or sideways. So I'm going like this, snow packing into my jacket, careening down the trail. What am I thinking? Come on, what am I thinking? This is wild. Nope, I wasn't thinking that. What am I thinking? Why am I doing this? Nope. How do I get it upright? No. Say it. No, I wasn't thinking let go. I look like an idiot. Come on, you guys. You know that's what I was thinking. I'm not thinking about my safety. If the dogs had been in trouble, I probably would have thought, I'm just thinking, oh, I look like an idiot. Musher's kids do this race. My friends came to watch. After a while, and it did feel like a very long while, I decided I was going to have to figure something out because it's not just a straight path. There's hills and stuff. So I did eventually figure out how to kind of kick my feet sideways and push off the snow and wrench it upright and then begin the process of working my sleeves back down, getting the snow out from my chest and carrying on. That was my race experience. I learned many things from that about being wildly present. First of all, You never, ever let go of your team. You just don't let go of them, not in a time like that. You never let go of your team when you're tipped over. Secondly, you will make mistakes. Some of them doozies, and some of them very public. It's gonna happen to all of us. Thirdly, I learned that time spent thinking you look like an idiot is not useful time. And fourthly, we will do what we practice. 95% of the time, right? When under stress, we will go back to what we have practiced, which is either really good news to you or really bad news, depending on what habits you hold. We will do what we practice. And finally, when we can regain our presence of mind, we will write ourselves. You will write yourself again. No matter how it sometimes feels like when you're in these places, it will always be this way. But you will write yourself. Now, as was mentioned, I had a team of 16 sled dogs for a long time. And some of the dogs were particular standouts in terms of the lessons they taught me over the years. And in that spirit, I would like for you to meet Scrapper. I know she's something. We bred our 2 best lead dogs and got a batch of puppies, Scrapper among them. And when you have little baby sled dogs, you guys, when they're about 3 months old, you put a little baby puppy harness on them, and you just attach something, a little log or a little tire or something. I mean, that's not about pulling weight, but it's so they get used to wearing a harness and good things happen when you wear it and learn not to chew it and that sort of thing. But one at a time, we put the baby puppy harness on them, and her 3 siblings would play, play, play. They'd feel that tug, and then you go back to playing. Scrapper, put the harness on her, play, play, play. She feels that tug, turns around, and takes off in a straight line. She is an amazing, sled dogs are amazing. She is an amazing one. Natural born leader. Don't tell me people aren't that too. All of us can learn it if we really want to, but there are some who just want it, and Scrapper's one of them. She never wanted to be anywhere on the team except in front. So at a very young age, we put her there because that's what she wanted, and she did great. What was funny is that when we would put her harness on her, we'd hook her up, and we'd put her harness on her, and the next thing that would happen is she would dive in her doghouse. And you'd think, well, you know she wants to go. So we'd pull her out, hook her up, and off we'd go. And one day we couldn't help it, we just had to see. So we put her harness on her, she dives in her doghouse, and we wait. All the other dogs howling their heads off. We wait. And it was about a minute, which doesn't sound that long, but in dog years, she emerged from her doghouse, shaking with excitement. And those runs were spot on. And we figured out, I don't know what she was doing in that doghouse, but I know she was like getting psyched, right? Just taking a minute to get lined up so that she could step out and do her job. And I think that is just an amazing lesson. We live in a culture that does not stop, not for anything. And so my question for you is, what's in your doghouse? Not when you got a week off. I'm talking when you have a minute between this and the next and all the different moving parts and pieces. What's in your doghouse that helps you go from destructive busy back to productive busy? Do you know? Are things coming to mind? I've asked many, many people this, and so if you need a little starter, things that people often say is, I just need to be outside for a second, or I just need to take a few deep breaths, or chocolate is an obvious one. Anyway, I think this is so important that what I'm going to ask you to do in a minute is just zip around your table and share one thing that is in your doghouse that helps you get lined up again. And we're not going to take long with this because we don't have that long. But just for a minute, zoom around. When you're done, you can stop talking, which is not easy. But this is how important I think it is, because we never do this. We never imagine what we might be able to do in terms of supporting each other in getting lined up again. So, are you ready? Go. What you got?
Breathing, meditation, coffee.
Coffee. Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, me too. How hard is it going to be to get their attention back? Yeah, we'll see how that goes. All right, here's the hard part. Here's the hard part. Oh, you're so kind. Thank you for giving me back your attention. I knew that was a risk. I often play the flute to get your attention back, but I did that already. Here's why we take the time in the middle of a short keynote to do that conversation. Because first of all, we've already established we're in a culture that does not stop. Secondly, how hard is it for you, even if you know something that's in your doghouse that would be useful, to give yourself permission to do it? I know for me, when I'm in my most destructive busy mode, means I'm stopping and starting 100 things and not actually getting anything done. The last thing I think I should do at that point is stop. What I think I should do is do more of it and still not actually achieve anything. Here's my challenge to you. When you get back to work, I want you to have, at your next meeting, I want you to have a doghouse conversation and find out a few things that's in each other's doghouses so that when someone is obviously not in their doghouse, you might be able to go up to them and suggest they do one of those things. Because we need permission. I have trouble with this too, and I work at home alone, right? So I don't have anybody nearby to do that, but I have a friend who also works at home alone, and we have an agreement. If it's happening to either of us, we get to call each other up. And I can call her up and say, it's happening. And she knows what to do. She knows that she needs to cup her hand around her phone and go like this. Chris, step away from the desk. Stand up. Are you standing? Now go to the door and go outside. Because I just can't. Even when I know it's the most important thing I could do. So if you have a meeting and discuss what's in each other's doghouses and offer permission that somebody take 5 minutes to get lined up again, I suspect you'll be able to be more wild on a consistent basis. Now the other example I have for you about presence is with a piece of dog sledding equipment. And I put a picture up because it's a little bit hard to see with me. Oops, I'm sorry, this is Scrapper. Once she is out of her doghouse, she is really ready to go. And she does not want to wait around for you to get everybody else hooked up. But there is no one happier or wilder than someone who's gotten themselves lined up and is doing important work in the world. I like to call that picture Happy Scrappy. So then I have this piece of equipment as another, oops, I'm sorry, I'm getting myself all turned around. Wildly present. Mistakes happen. You will right yourself and create a culture of doghouse moments. Now, this is a piece of dog sledding equipment. Anybody have any guesses what it is or how it works? It's 2 different lengths, loops on the bottom. What do you think? It connects something, right? Dogs, people often think, oh, is this how the dogs are hooked up? But no, not really. There's a funny swivel thing up here. You know, it's a lot easier to show you than to tell you how this works. So in order to do that, I'm going to need 2 sled dogs and a musher to come up here with me. And I'll be the tree. I'm not kidding. Come on, wild ones. There we go. Look at her run. We got a wolf. Perfect. Thank you kindly.
Hi, I'm Betsy. I'm
Betsy
a sled
is
dog.
here. You're a sled dog?
Yes.
I think you have to be a dog. I only need 3. That's okay. You can all stand help. All right, so I need a musher. Who's my musher? Okay, we
I
have.
don't know what that means.
That's okay. Margaret is our musher. So you're here, and our sled dogs. How do you say your name?
Pookie.
Pokey or Pookie?
Pookie.
Pookie is one of our sled dogs. Beautiful. And
Betsy.
Betsy. Pookie and Betsy are our sled dogs. You can be another dog. Who would you like to be?
Yo-yo.
Yo-Yo. So, our 3 dogs, Pookie, Betsy, and Yo-Yo, are in the dog yard. Margaret, right? Meg, okay, is our musher, and she wants to go for a run. So we're going to picture the sled is here, the gang line, work with me here, is the thing that connects all the dogs, and then we hook up the dogs. So Meg's ready to go for a run. So why don't you go get Betsy and bring her up to the dog line.
Come on, Betsy, let's go.
Okay. So she gets hooked up a little bit further. Now what is going to happen when Meg lets go of Betsy? Yeah. She's out of here. There's no weight on the sled. She is gone. So how do we keep our dogs in place until all the dogs are in line? Enter the quick release. Now I am a tree. See how that works? Yeah, so this is connected to the sled, which is connected to the gang line, which is connected to Betsy. So essentially, we're connected, and I'm a tree, and you can't go anywhere. Now, Meg can go get Pookie.
Come on, Pookie, let's go.
And one little side note before you bring your dog up.
Don't run.
That's not far from the truth, I must say. I've seen that before. I've actually seen that entire scenario happen in real life. So one thing you do, you might think that you'd take a dog by the collar and walk on all, have them on all fours, right? But they're too strong. They would pull you over. So instead, we teach our dogs to bounce like a bunny. So we really take them from 4-wheel drive to 2-wheel drive. So you bounce them, actually, to the sled. So you take Pookie to the line. New Mexico, man. I'm moving. And now Pookie hangs on. And then was it Yo-Yo? You hook up Yo-Yo. There we go. Now our dogs are all set. Now Meg can come back. Pretend you're at the sled right here, and you're facing your team. You're hanging onto the sled. If she had to untie a whole complicated thing, right, she'd have both her hands off. And what would happen? It would get loose. You guys would take off. You would fall off. So we need something really simple. So a little more tension on this, please. That's good. With 2 fingers, I want you to pull the direction of that arrow right there. Look at that. It just lets go. It's called a quick release. And it keeps our team in place until we're ready to go. Thank you so much, my kind musher and sled dogs. Thanks, you guys. I'm coming to New Mexico. I might just have to move to New Mexico. I know that's where he's from. I've seen that whole thing. It was really actually quite accurate, except for the part when he came back. That's when you put everybody back and you start running, because you can't find them. They love to run so much. But anyway, what does that have to do with wildly inspiring, do you think? You remember what it feels like. All of us have experienced someone seeing our wild sides when we couldn't, and what that feels like to be believed in. You're in that business. I know you know this feeling. It takes trust, right? Suppose that Meg had hooked up her team, and then she's like, oh boy, I don't know, it's kind of cold. Maybe I'll go get a cup of tea in the cabin before I do this run, and she left her team. What would happen? That took 2 fingers. They are going to be lunging and barking, jumping over each other. Eventually, they're going to pop that thing, and they're going to be gone. What if instead she was so excited, she hooked up her team, and she just hopped on the sled and pulled it like this? Well, she's probably going to fall off. You really got to be set, do one more check, and go. Train them, trust them, and let them go. Right? Train them, trust them, and let them go. That's how we inspire. We believe, and then we trust. Then we get to wildly welcoming. You all find yourselves in a position of power. Whether you feel it or not, the work that you do, you are in a position of power. And that can be trickier than it seems. Because even if you want to do something like say, hey, what'd you do this weekend? If you're in a position of power and you ask me that, I might be like, why do you want to know? Right? I mean, it's not quite clear where that question is coming from. And so one way to help be welcoming is to reveal first. And here's what I mean by that. So instead of just saying, hey, what'd you do this weekend? I might start out, first of all, being honest about why I'm asking. And I might say, in your position, something like, it really matters that we're connected and we know each other pretty well if we're going to make our way through this. Now, when we're not talking about this stuff, I'm going to be talking about my new puppy and my garden. It's just all I'm going to be talking about. What are you going to be talking about? Do you see the difference? If I reveal first, I'm creating a welcoming, opening space for someone to step into, as opposed to saying, so what'd you do this weekend? Because it's different how it's heard. Similarly, you probably run into some names that are a little bit hard to remember or pronounce, whether that's on a team or with some of your clients. And so often what we'll say is, oh, I'm so bad with names, I'm so sorry. How do you say your name again? And it always puts the burden on that person who probably has to say it a lot if they have a name we're not used to. So how about this? And they're here, right in the front row. My parents named me Christy. I hate that name. Since a little kid, I never liked it. I switched to Chris really fast. Nothing wrong with the name, just not me. So in 6th grade, Mrs. Holdridge kept calling me Christy. And I finally had to have a standoff with her. So she would call, Christy? And I'd say, it's not my name. And it took about a week or two to train her, but eventually I got her worked out. And I've been Chris ever since. Everybody has a story about their name. What's yours? Do you hear the difference? I'm revealing first. I'm being willing to be vulnerable, to share a little something, so that when I ask your name and your story around your name, first of all, you're not the only one having to say that. Secondly, if there's a story, you might actually remember it. And thirdly, it builds more of a bond. And now some of you are going, I don't have a story about name. Yes, you do. I didn't think I did until I thought about it for a while. Everybody has a story about their name being named after something or what got put together. Everybody has a story. It's a way to say yes, to say welcome as we work together in figuring everything out. This is Mazel. Mazel was found running down I-94 in downtown Minneapolis dragging a chain. Turned his head, got hit by a car, but he's okay. He's okay. The person behind saw this happen, pulled over, picked him up, raced to the vet. The vet, on cleaning him up, realized that the only thing that happened to Mazel was a lower canine tooth got knocked out of his head. You see he's missing a bottom fang there. No broken jaw, no head injury, just a missing tooth. So the guy who rescued him was a Jewish man. He nicknamed him Mazel, which roughly means luck in Hebrew, for being hit in the head on the highway and just missing a tooth for the story. So they spent a few weeks trying to find Mazel's home, and nobody ever responded. So the Jewish man came back and checked in, and he said, boy, my family's been talking about getting a dog for a long time. I mean, maybe this was meant to be. So he packed up Mazel, and he brought him home to his apartment. When you live near a big city and you have a dog team, it's not unusual to get a phone call that goes something like this. Chris, he seems to love to run. We're thinking he might make a great addition to your team, and we were hoping you could come get him today. Well, we went and looked at this guy, good-looking dog, young dog, probably Malamute based on his build, sweet, smart, very friendly, sweet dog. I thought, we can do this. We can help out. We can do this. So take a look at this picture and talk to me for a minute about body language. I'll bet you've seen that before. Friendly dog? No? Tell me what physically you're looking at that's telling you that's not a friendly dog. What do you see? Tail, eyes, ears, stance. Yep, lots of information in that picture, isn't there? See, I would submit that if we had ears that stuck up and a tail and fur on the back of our necks, we would not need these programs. Because you would know, right? You would walk up to this dog and you'd say, maybe we should talk about this another time. It's a doghouse moment. No, it turns out that, well, Mazel is very friendly with people. He doesn't like other dogs at all. What do we do with a dog like that? His basic approach to life is if I'm having a bad day, it's your fault. I know you don't know anybody like that. Well, what do we do with this? I mean, first of all, he's new to the team. Maybe he just needs to learn what our expectations are. So we agreed to keep him for 3 months. And in those 3 months, we're going to be pretty firm with him, right? Kind of stand up tall, let him know he's not, whatever, I'm the musher here. And when he would get in little fights with other dogs, which he was doing all the time, we would pull him away, we would bite his ear. That's how Mom would train him not to get in fights, and just, keep him learning the rules. 3 months. 3 months later, this is what we got. Yeah, it didn't change anything. So no kidding, we went out and sat in the snowbank and just watched to try to figure out what is going on with this guy. And what we realized on further investigation was even though he was aggressive, underneath that aggression was fear. And I know you know that too. See, he's sort of an alpha wannabe. And he doesn't have whatever that is in the dog world, and he knows it, and it scares the you-know-what out of him. So he's all this to try to keep that hidden. And this is the portion of the program where we just step away from what we're talking about to say just one thing. In our political arena right now, many of our leaders are being referenced as alpha dogs. Alpha males are not bullies. Alpha males are confident in their power. In a wolf pack, if there is a sick wolf, it is often the alpha male that stays with them. In the dog yard, it's often the alpha male who is the sweetest one in the entire yard. They have no reason to pick fights. They're not bullies. They are confident in their power. I am just talking about dogs. So we thought we should give Mazel a better chance than that. So instead of trying to tell him who's boss, we realized we were, in trying to help, reinforcing what he was most afraid of. So we spent 3 more months with him, getting low and talking soft and touching him a lot. And he doesn't have to run this close to another dog. It could be 2 dogs on the line, then him by himself, and then 2 more dogs behind him until he got more comfortable. 3 months of that, and more often than not, this is what we get from Mazel. You can see him in a minute. Or not. That's him in the back right corner. His tug line, that red rope is nice and tight. His tail's up, he's pulling hard. Happy dog, happy musher. Now he will always be crabby. That's who he is. That is never going away. But when we can get inside a little bit and understand more about what's going on, we have a better chance to help him. And I know you know this. This is certainly preaching to the choir on this one. But what Mazel needed was reassurance. And reassurance is a tricky thing. It's not quite as obvious as you might think, because you all know what it feels like. Sometimes when life is doing what life does, and someone says to you, it's going to be okay. Sometimes that feels great, doesn't it? And other times, it is not great, because obviously they don't understand, and it's not okay, and it never will be okay, and it's just not helpful to hear that. It's like if someone's up here freaking out, and we push them down, it doesn't help. And it's much easier to tell you a story than try to explain that. I got to speak at in University of Illinois to a professional sorority, and these are all young women going into the field of agriculture. Had a whole day with them. It was super fun, talking about being wild when they get out there in the workplace. At the end of the day, one young woman raises her hand, and she goes, this is all cool, but it doesn't change that I'm going to graduate in a couple months and drive my pickup truck out to talk to a farmer, and he's not going to want to talk to me. And I, of course, said, well, if you show up passionate and creative and spontaneous and alive and free, he's going to sense that and it's going to be great. Is that helpful? She said, yeah. I thought, oh man, I blew that. But she gave me another chance. Because she said, if I am in a truck with a guy who hasn't even graduated yet, and he comes with me, and we go to talk to the farmer is only going to talk to him, he's not even going to look at me. I said, well, that stinks. Why would you even want to do this job? And she rose up out of her seat, and she said, because I love farming, and if we manage water right, we can save the world. I said, maybe you want to lead with that. She found it. She was not about to throw away everything she's learned. She was up here saying, this is really hard. I said, oh, just be wild, it'll be fine. She was up here saying, no, it's really hard. I said, you're right, that really stinks. Boom, she got there. This golden rule business, come on now. Do unto others as they would like to be done unto. I got one more dog for you. Oops, see, that's my reminder slide because I always forget. Has this been helpful so far? I'm so glad. You don't need to even touch these yet, but I want to remember to tell you about them. You have these at your place, and when we're finished, you get to fill them out. It's perforated. The top part is for you. You get to fight over which picture you want, the sea kayaking in Baja one or the dog sledding one. But the bottom is a chance to receive poetry in your inbox from me a couple times a month. And if there are other organizations you know that need a little bit more wild, then write that down too. All right, here we are. You ready? The last dog. This is Kita. Oh, I know. Let's be clear. World's worst sled dog. He came to us through a crazy route. Too long to explain, but anyway, he came to us as an adult, obviously never having pulled a sled before. And when you have an adult dog who's never pulled before, but is clearly some kind of a husky mix, they'll have that instinct to pull. He was given to us because he was running like crazy. So when you have a dog like that, it's not like they can watch a dog team pull a sled and go, oh, that's what I'm going to do. It's just not how dog brains work. They have to experience it. So what you do is you hook them up with just a couple older, slower dogs, and they just have to try it. And that first time when you pull the quick release, they don't know it's coming. And they might get kind of jerked for a second, and then they start to run, and they feel that pull. And often that's all it takes to get them to begin to join the team. And then it's more about learning endurance and pacing and how to stay tight and learning the voice commands and all that. But the pulling comes naturally. And to be honest, once in a while, when you first pull that quick release, they don't know what's coming. They might get drug off their feet for just a second. But then they hop up and they start to go. There's just kind of not another way to do it. So that's what we do with Kita. We hook him up. Our two sweetest old dogs in front. He's by himself behind. You're going to have so much fun, Kita. You ready? Here we go. You're going to love this. I get on my sled. I pull the quick release. Here's Kita. Riding along on his back. I stop the sled. I set the snow hook. I stand him up, I ruffle his ears. You just didn't see that coming. Now you're ready. Here we go. I pull the snow hook. He did figure out how to stay on his feet. He also figured out how to run fast enough to not get bumped by the sled, but slow enough to not actually be pulling anything. What do you do with a dog like that? The best example I can give you is this is a picture of Kita. You guys ready? When another dog team is leaving the yard. You remember that first video, the other dogs at the end of their leash saying, why didn't you take me? I would have pulled for you. And this guy, he's like, I'm good. You guys have a nice time now. I got the sun, I'm in the straw, you just have a nice run. What do you do with that? Sled dogs, colleagues, clients. What do we do? This is not easy. Well, guess what? Guess who's Mazel's best friend? Because Kita doesn't care about the whole alpha thing. So Mazel, we can pen them together, and Mazel can boss him around all day long, and Kita doesn't care. And the whole dog yard is calmer. And interesting to note that no other dog on my team could do that. We tried everybody with Mazel, and he just kept getting in fights. That's pretty valuable to me. And here's the other thing. Check it out. I teach dog sledding, right? I take people who've never done this before, come up to northern Minnesota for 4 days, you're off the grid. And the first day, you go for a ride to just get a feel for it and what the trails are like. But the second day, with more instruction, you're driving a team. So it's a lot to learn, including harnessing. Now this may look obvious, you know, it kind of goes on the back and the head goes through there and stuff, but I have counted and there are 16 ways to put this on a dog, 15 of which are not useful. It takes a little getting used to. And we used to have people come to the main cabin, right, and we'd show you how to do it. We had a stuffed animal husky, and we'd show you how you fold this part, and you can grab the webbing and the padding, you put it over the dog's head, and then you straddle him, and you pull the paws through, and you straighten it out. But it's a stuffed animal, and the paws are all stiff, and you're kind of wrenching it on, and you know, you kind of maybe get an idea, but it's not all that accurate. Kita is the perfect demo dog. Because he doesn't care about the pulling thing. And he will stand there, and you can practice. And one at a time, you can fold it, you can straddle him, you can put it over and pull his paws through, and if you don't get it quite right, you can adjust it, and you can take it off him. And the next person can try it, and the next person, and the next person after that. I think he likes the pageantry, really, of dog sledding. Now, if you did that with a sled dog who loves to pull, they would be seriously unhappy with you, because when they wear this, it means they get to run. And if you took it off without them getting to run, they would not be happy dogs. So once again, Kita is serving a role that nobody else on my team can serve. And so it is with great humility that I say to you that Kita is an invaluable member of my team. He will always drive me crazy. But if I had gotten rid of him because he wasn't pulling well and gotten a strong, fast, all-heart, great sled dog, honestly, you guys, my team would not be as strong. And I know you know this. The truth is, everybody has gifts. Everybody has gifts. And there are too many of you in this room. There are too many people working in a field that shouldn't be. And you're there for the Kitas of the world. Everybody has gifts. And if we are wildly welcoming, we will find a way. We'll reveal first to try to be as open as we can and invite people to step in. We will mindfully reassure instead of just placate. And we will remember that everybody has gifts. So this work you do is not easy. I know you've seen horrors, some that would be hard to even explain. And I know you've had some amazing success stories. It's worth it to be wild. To quote the poet Mary Oliver, this is our one wild and precious life. So I think, why not step in it? For the beauty and the mess. And yep, it's gonna hurt sometimes. If we open ourselves to this, it's gonna hurt, and I know you know this. But it also opens us to joy and to being able to really see and really feel in our willingness to be wild. And if we do that as a team and are collaborating and pooling ideas and getting creative, part of what's fun is that you get to be a part of something that looks and feels a little bit like this.
Okay, Jaxie, ha, Sami, ha, ha. Good boy, Jax, good boy, Jax, good girl, son. Good job. Good job.
3 dogs pulling 2 people, using voice commands to get them not to take that turn, but to go this way. Surely, you guys, if that's possible, we can find a way to work together to do this incredibly important work and find a way to keep saying yes and to take care of yourselves in the process. It has been an honor and a privilege. Thank you very much.